In the news this week, disunity crisis, can Liberals heal and woo young voters in 2019?
Save Our Schools, regional education on the line over foreign home buyers tax legislation funding.
Protests against the Outer Harbour plans gained momentum at Challenger Beach.
And the Asian community gathered to celebrate the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. Party disunity continues to haunt the Liberals as the question of Parliament eligibility drags on for Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton. With the federal election coming next year, does the Liberal Party has what it takes to reunite and appeal to young voters? Andrew Fuster takes a look.
3 weeks after Scott Morrison took over and became Prime Minister, trouble remains for the Liberal Party as the undermining continues. Questions over Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton's parliamentary eligibility continue to drive disunity. Meanwhile, the by-election in Wentworth also threatens the government's majority. Political experts say there is a chance that voters in Wentworth might reject the Liberal Party.
Wentworth is quite a progressive Liberal seat, and the sort of policies that Tony Abbott was putting forward weren't acceptable, but Malcolm Turnbull was much more acceptable. Obviously he was their member, but it was just as much his policies that were important to the people of Wentworth.
Dr Ian Cook also believes it will be hard for the Morrison government to appeal to younger voters due to policy dissatisfaction.
Young people might see them as perhaps maybe the job-generating government. There are lots of other policies they're not performing on that young people are interested in.
Business News WA journalist Matt McKenzie, who has paid close attention to political issues, argued that the party has to make ground on social media if they want to woo young voters.
The Liberal Party, if it really wants to compete for younger voters, has to have an excellent ground game on social media, and I think there's work being done on that.
But one thing is certain, with the Labor Party continuing to lead in the polls, playing catch-up and dealing with disunity will be a multitasking headache for the Liberals before the 2019 election. Andrew Fuster, WAMN News.
The fight is continuing to save regional WA schools, with the National Party calling for a new foreign home buyers tax to help fund regional education. But as Nelson Liu reports, the One Nation Party says it's a furphy and claims debt is still the state government's focus if the legislation goes ahead.
A fight for regional education, continuing on the steps of Parliament House this week. And WA's National Party says a new tax hike could be the key to saving regional schools.
Our view still stands.
New legislation in Parliament could see a foreign property buyers tax increased from 4% to 7%, raising $123 million over 4 years. The Nationals want a portion of it to fund regional education services.
Earlier this year, they revised their education cuts in Western Australia to some $40 million, many of those affecting regional services in our communities. And we don't think it's an unreasonable ask that a portion of that $100 million surplus be put to this effort.
But the One Nation Party isn't supporting the move, claiming Treasurer Ben Wyatt wants to use it to pay down debt.
It's a total waste of time. He needs the funds to repay the debt.
One Nation says the Nationals' education plans for the legislation's funds is a furphy, but the Nationals claim One Nation has been conned by the government's debt repayment plan.
The government is not paying down debt. They don't intend to pay down debt.
However, One Nation says it still backs regional schools.
No one more than One Nation has stood up for regional education.
Support is still needed to pass the legislation through Parliament. Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
A protest was held at Challenger Beach over the weekend, demanding the government to reverse its plans to build a new port in Cockburn Sound. With 3 local councils, including Fremantle, Melville and Cockburn, recently withdrew their support, the campaigners hope to secure the critical spawning spot for local snapper fish, as the Outer Harbour construction involves dredging and land reclamation.
Well, this is letting the government know that we're not going to stand idly by it. Obviously the weather today's played a part in people turning up. It's too nice a day. The stage from here is on Thursday. They actually present the proposal to Parliament. We'll be there, we'll be letting them know, and we'll be providing support from up in the gallery.
The government will deliver a record $7.3 million in bushfire management funding assistance throughout Western Australia. A $5 million fund will be shared with 17 regional councils and agencies to physically address local bushfire threats. $3.3 million will be assigned to regional councils in order to carry out 410 bushfire mitigation measures, including planned burns. The government said this is the first time that The government said this is the first time that the Department of Fire and Emergency Services has moved into preventative measures as part of a $35 million package to curb bushfire risk on unallocated Crown land for the next 4 years.
People got the opportunity to challenge their reality following the introduction of a new TEDx presentation in Fremantle. The event Perception versus Reality was held at Notre Dame University, Fremantle. Featured a range of speakers giving listeners the chance to engage in different perspectives across areas including science, research, lifestyle and art.
The tickets actually sold out in 20 minutes. So the whole social media campaign and the buzz was just phenomenal, you know, and the quality of the respondents was absolutely great.
In the United States, the Governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, stated that Hurricane Florence was wreaking havoc as the state faces multiple threats. It's believed that approximately 500,000 people were without electricity. The Neuse River reported surging up to 3 metres as rescue workers continued their role as dangerous weather conditions worsen. Tibetan spiritual leader Dalai Lama is expected to meet with victims of alleged sexual abuse in the Netherlands during his European tour. It's reported that the group requested a meeting to discuss the alleged abuse carried out by both former and current Buddhist teachers. It's understood that written testimonies will be presented during the meeting with Dalai Lama.
And finally this week, the Mid-Autumn Festival has brought the Asian community together for a major celebration in Balcatta. More than 700 people attended WA's oldest Chinese club, Chonghua Association's Mid-Autumn Festival Gala, as families enjoyed performances such as line dances, martial arts and ancient Chinese character role play. The association's honorary secretary Sheila Reject believes the event will help the next generation understanding the importance of Chinese culture.
Mid-Autumn Festival is something that dates back 2,000 years ago, and by celebrating the event involving lots and lots of children and kids at grassroots level, we ensure that we continue to perpetuate this very treasured tradition well into the future for generations to come.
And that's our news for this week. You can follow the latest news on our website and Facebook page.
We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Until then, good night, take care.
Good evening.